Hi there, it's 7 p.m. in state-controlled Britain. Here we are with our two-tier legal system and the NHS, the poor people that work there, getting it left, right and centre. Anyway, we won't get into that. We will get into the UK. I don't think it's the UK's top nutritionist. I think the world's top nutritionist. It's Richard Smith. Hi, Richard.
Stephen, how are you doing, my man? And the opposite, I believe, is also true. I did a post recently on Instagram where I referred to you as the world leading expert on bloods, which I truly believe. So anyone with any blood testing requirements, book a consultation with Stephen because he is number one.
Well, that's
so what a
very
team.
kind.
What a team.
Yeah, thank you very much. I just think it's interpretation, to be honest. I just feel people don't do any joined up thinking. I really find it very frustrating to see people on big shows talking about stuff and they don't really even look at the basics. I'm not going to give too much away. I'm doing something tomorrow with Lee Copus about iron being interpreted in the wrong way. Quite a considerable thing. But anyway, Richard, we have a super chat. For those people that don't know what I mean by that, you can make a donation, which helps the channel and also moves your question to the front of the queue. And talking of Q, you can put Q in front of your question and it pops out because we have no one moderating for us. It's just us two sitting in a room, one in Wales, one in England, and we just do it. So we're going to do the first question. Gwenan says, do we have the same iodine deficiency in food here in the UK as is talked about in America? Do women need to take it? Thank you for all you do. Did you want to answer first, Richard?
Yeah, I'll jump into this because you are, with a super simple answer, you are an expert when it comes to iodine or iodine, whichever way you want to pronounce it. Look, I think almost every form of food on the planet is not what it once was. I believe that even the vegetables and things are much more divided and protected, and with what they are treated with, the glyphosate, for example, affects those. And so is the meat, that we consume from animals and so on and so forth. The sea, in which our fish swim in, all of these toxins contribute to the downregulation of nutrients. Now, that said, do I believe that we cannot obtain everything from diet? No, of course we can. We can still obtain everything from diet. Now, iodine deficiency it can be common. There is a simple way to test, which Stephen will get into now. But for natural sources, and there's a couple of things to take into account with this. Natural sources, let's hit this, first and foremost. We've got things like organ meats, beef liver, incredibly high in iodine, chicken, incredibly high in iodine, seafood, tuna, kelp or seaweed if you're eating your plant compounds, shellfish and so on and so forth. But animal proteins contain these. But there's a lot more to it than just consuming the iodine. When we consume iodine, it breaks down into iodide, and the iodide is converted back into iodine during the creation of T4 and T3. But there are several parts in this process which are critical. One of them is the absorption of the body's ability to create this and make this process, and that can be blocked by plant compounds. Things like compounds that are high in vitamin A or beta carotene, I should say, not vitamin A, because true vitamin A is retinol, and plant compounds that are high in isothiocyanates, particularly sulforaphane. So these can block the absorption at the core. Plant compounds that are high in beta carotene can prevent the bioavailability of retinol because it uses T4 to convert into T3, lowering the amount of T4. And we've covered this a number of times, but what is converted from beta carotene to retinol, which is very, very small, it's like 20 times the conversion to convert beta carotene into retinol, 21 times. If you are lucky enough to have enough retinol converted, then retinol is used to convert the T4 into T3. So this may lead you with a vitamin A deficiency. My point there is the plant compounds, things like broccoli and carrots, and even things like spinach, which are high in oxalates, can affect the absorption of iodine in the first place and cause issues downstream. So sometimes looking at the root cause may be super beneficial, because if we can remove plant compounds, then this process of consuming the iodine, the iodide back to iodine, and then the conversion of T4 into T3 is going to be far more efficient, and the whole process is less damaged if we are not consuming copious amounts of plant compounds. But there are lots of foods that we can obtain. A carnivore ketogenic based lifestyle contains lots and lots of iodine, but you can supplement should you wish to do so. And there's a simple test you can do, Steve, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. That was a brilliant segue into that bit. Although don't forget, the question is about the difference between the agricultural practices, really, between America and USA. But if you are worried about your iodine levels, you can do an iodine clearance test. And it's one of those things that are so simple. I don't understand why people don't offer it more often, or at least talk about it. I know you can put iodine on your arm, for instance, and see how quickly it absorbs. But the iodine clearance test is you will drink a fluid. It's like a blood test, but actually it's a urine test. And you might even actually just be given a pill now, which has a certain amount of iodine in. And just to make sums really easy, let's say it has 100 units of iodine in it, and you take that tablet or you drink that drink. Now, one of the things I've found that people that do this test, maybe 10% just message me and say, I am definitely deficient. I've just taken the tablet or the drink and I feel amazing. And it makes a big difference straight away. I'm not promising that. Please note, I said about 10% of people say that. And then what happens over a 24-hour period, your urine is analyzed. Now, the reason I said, let's make it really simple. Let's use the word 100 units. Let's imagine that in your urine there was 100 units of iodine over a 24-hour period. It's pretty much nailed on that you're not deficient in iodine, because your body has said, wait, too much, we're going to just excrete it. And that's one of the things I think people like Ken Berry is very big in telling people to just take a couple of drops, which I agree with, by the way. I don't think it can hurt because the body excretes it. I'm not telling you to go mad over it. So it is easy to find out if you are deficient or not, and that's the best test you can do. Now, if you haven't got the money to do that, then rubbing it on your arm and seeing how quickly it dissolves is a cheaper way of doing it. Or even cheaper, get the drops, take them, see if there's a difference in whatever your symptoms is. That is the biggest thing, though. Make sure that you're actually doing it for a reason, not because someone's just said it's a good idea. If you don't have symptoms of unexplained weight gain or weight loss or fatigue, those sort of things, then you might not be deficient in iodine anyway. But when we get into the difference between the UK and America, there is more land mass in America, and yes, there's bigger coasts and stuff like that. But if you look sort of like on square footage, we are surrounded by seawater. So the soil will have a lot more iodine in it. That's really that simple. So if you're living near the coast and your food supply is coming from the coast, coming from near the sea, it's very unlikely that you will be depleted of iodide, as Richard mentioned, in the soil. And it returns to the soil as well, through volatilization, where that's basically, it rains and then it drops back in and then it just gets distributed in the soil. So I think it's hard to say. I don't think there's a definitive answer. I think some of the food in America is probably not that low in iodine or iodide. And I think some of the stuff in the UK probably is. I think it's just a little bit of a lottery. But if you looked on a sort of per head, per square meter, it's probably about the same. But yes, definitely, if you compare it to 100 years ago, what the practices now are just so awful that you may need to supplement. Is that all you wanted me to say, Richard?
Sounds good. Perfect. Great answer.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Good. I never know where you're going, you see. So, right. That was a super chat. So thanks for that. That's a nice kickoff with that one. Andy just wants to say thank you, Richard, for the free tub of electrolytes, which is very good. Christine, just to give you a shout out, just got in the Skool new member today. Great to see you. Hope you enjoy it. We'll have a little look at what Skool's all about, maybe about 7:30. James Smith, question: is pork fat with higher linoleic acid content than ruminant meat as bad for you as seed oils that contain linoleic acid. P.S. I use Richard's cherry electrolytes for homemade ice lollies.
Woohoo!
Good
Fantastic.
question.
But yeah, lots on the electrolytes today. Thank you. Well appreciated, James. Yep, fantastic. The electrodes. That's what I've got in there. Believe it or not, I don't know if you can see the slight orange color, which comes from the astaxanthin, by the way, which is the world's only true antioxidant found from plant compounds in that sense. I won't open a can of worms. We'll get into this later, maybe. So is pork fat with higher linoleic acid content? And so it's around 10 times higher. So typically 2% found in beef and up to 20% found in pork. Linoleic acid is the oxidized form of omega-6, which we are incredibly worried about in regards to seed oils. So you're right to be concerned, and it's a fantastic answer. There is a caveat to this. The reason that linoleic acid is damaging is because it's oxidized. Now, if linoleic acid found in fresh meat is indeed fresh, then it's not yet oxidized. So linoleic acid is found in all animals, including beef, as we just said. So it is in there and it oxidizes over time. So this is why I'm not a fan of aged meats. This is why I eat my meat fresh. I love the taste of aged meats, but they do become oxidized over time and can be problematic. And it can lead to a histamine response and so on and so forth. So the question is the pork that you buy in fresh? And that makes a huge difference. I eat pork. I love eating pork. I love the fat on the pork. I think it's fantastic. But I do generally limit the amount I eat to maybe 1 to 2 times a week. Sometimes I may not eat it at all within a week. But the important thing for me, beyond is it fresh? So this is the first port to call. Is your pork fresh? Now, when we start looking at things like bacon and gammon from the supermarket, then they've been there for quite a long time, and they tend to have long shelf life, which is something we need to be wary of. That's not to say that I never consume. Fantastic. We'll get into this now. That's not to say I never consume shop bought pork if I'm desperate, but I do try to get it from a butcher and fresh. Now, the biggest thing when it comes to pork for me is what it's fed. So it's not so much the linoleic acid content. I know if I buy pork from my butcher that is fresh, so it's going to be less oxidized, fantastic. But what's it fed? If it's fed grain, then it's going to be higher in the compounds found within grains, like the lectins, which are going to be problematic, and this is going to lead to downstream deleterious effects. Now, that is what I'm more concerned about over the linoleic acid from pork, from fresh pork that I've bought from the butcher. Wild pork, pigs, for example, are meant to be in the wild. They're meant to live in forests and forage and eat off the floor and things, not be fed grains. So it does make a difference what your pig is fed. This is why I'm not a fan of pork from supermarkets, because you see these awful programs, and this is where the vegans become upset because they think that we are feeding and fueling this industry. But Stephen and we purchase at least predominantly grass-fed, grass-finished beef and lamb and pork. We get it from a sustainable source using regenerative farming techniques. And I don't typically support supermarkets for these products based on that. Now, there are occasions in which you may be caught short and you need to purchase these from the supermarkets. But I do try to support my local butcher and my local businesses over the bigger companies who are quite literally just in this for a profit. And I think they've destroyed the high street shops, haven't they? This is why we should all support local butchers, by the way, and local farms and farm shops. So that's what I try to do. So shop bought meat, especially in regards to pork, is very different from the type of pork that you will obtain from your local butcher and your local farm. So that's where I buy mine from. Super good quality. I never get any response or any downstream negative effects from the pork that I consume there. But I do if I consume it from the supermarket. So it's not so much the linoleic acid content being higher. It's more to do with what it's fed. And again, whether it's fresh or not makes a big difference.
Brilliant, Richard. Brilliant. And of course, when you look at linoleic acid in walnuts compared to any animal product, you're going about 100 times more So let's go to some super chats. Dr. Abs, £2 super chat for the wardrobe matching.
But we're not, because I'm blue. This is blue. Now, Stephen said this to me before we came on. Blue. This is light sky blue. At least not my type of sky that I see in South Wales, but yeah, light blue. But thank you.
Right. Yeah, and thanks, Abs, for tuning in. And the super chat is helpful. Tina Larson says, our PT, that's a personal trainer, not physical therapist, I'm guessing. Our PT recommended to our 15-year-old son, who still consumes some carbs, to have them after 6 p.m. so it will metabolize overnight.
Look,
Thoughts on this?
So, Steve, I know you've got, you can probably hammer this home, but there's no requirement for exogenous carbohydrate at all, and it's in fact, bouncing off the super chat that Dr. Abs just put in, he's released a series of biochem videos on glycation, this is what I was watching just before I came on the call. Actually, incredible videos. He's live in his Skool group a number of times a week, so check that out. And obviously, Stephen and I have got ours, and Dr. Abs kindly comes on as a guest with that regularly. But one of the things that he points out in these videos is in regards to what glycation is and how damaging it is in regards to activating NFKB in the NOx pathway and leading to reactive oxygen species and so on and so forth. So carbohydrate we make, and Tina knows this. Tina and her husband Steve are fantastic supporters of the channel. There's no requirement for exogenous carbohydrate at all. The body makes all of the glucose it needs via gluconeogenesis. So we will send lactate and other substrates, proteins and fats, basically in what I regard as a reverse of glycolysis. It is slightly different. There's a difference of 3 enzymes, I believe. And basically we create glucose via this mechanism, and it's demand driven, at least predominantly, and we create everything that we need via this mechanism, and this is driven via cortisol and human growth hormone and a few other things. But the point is we make all of the glucose that we need, so there's no requirement for exogenous carb. Now, Tina's mentioned there, the 15-year-old son who is still consuming carbs. Now, I would say the best time to consume them would probably be just before a workout or just after a workout, personally, in regards to muscle glycogen replenishment. But again, it's not actually muscle glycogen that fuels athletic performance. It's blood glucose. And we probably go into a can of worms in regards to this, because muscle glycogen isn't responsible for athletic performance. But in the case of Tina and her son and Steve, who are lifting weights, then glycogen can allow us to lift more weights, because for every 1 gram of glyco that we hold in the muscle, we can store 3 to 4 grams potentially of water, which adds leverage, which is why we see people who consume things like anabolic steroids, like Dianabol, become incredibly big and incredibly strong very quickly, but they lose their strength when they come off the anabolic because they've lost the volume. So it adds leverage to the muscle, which is part of the way the creatine works, for example. So, consuming the carb pre-training may be more beneficial in regards to allowing you to lift more weights. If you can lift more weights, you cause more damage, and then this may lead to better healing and recovery. But look, the simple answer is, if you do not consume any carbs, your lactate from the muscle, which is created when you're doing this movement and any sort of exercise, this lactate is the substrate that is sent into this gluconeogenesis pathway and creates glucose. And we can actually replenish muscle glycogen at a higher rate than even ourselves as a carb athlete or our carb athlete counterparts. So that's what I'd recommend. Either just before or just after. I probably preference just before for that mechanism. And if you are consuming carb, my carb of choice would be white rice, because white rice is lectin free. I'm not a fan of honey, because around 46% of honey is glucose. The rest is fructose, and I think 44% in fact is glucose, 2% mannose. And I can't remember what the other 2% is, but the point is it's all sugar, and it glycates and causes issues, and comes with a whole host of other problems. Other carbohydrates come along with lectins, which can cause intestinal permeability, but at least the white rice is lectin free, so it's going to cause at least less damage. But try not to overconsume would be my just enough would be my advice.
Yeah. That's a great answer. My answer would be the idea that carbohydrates after 6 p.m. leads to better metabolism. This is my thoughts. There's no scientific evidence to that whatsoever. A total myth. 15 years of being an advanced personal trainer. I can assure you, I did 5 years believing in the high carb stuff, and I can tell you the results are in. I tell you, that's just a myth. There is lifestyle factors. You see, if it depends on so many things. There is no magic time for anyone to do anything. See, Richard's brilliantly said, maybe before training. We didn't say maybe before training at 7 a.m. or maybe before training at 6 p.m. It is really, to get very broad. When someone says to me, what is the best time for me to work out? I always say the time you can do it. Because it's no good me saying, right, you're going to do Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, and you're going to do it at 5 a.m. in the morning, because that looks like the best time to do it when you're totally fasted and you've just got up and insulin and growth hormones all circling around your body. And you say, well, I can't do that. I've got kids. I'm not getting up at 5. So anyway, I hope that's a $5 answer, Tina. Hope you enjoyed that. That's great. I've got another super chat here, so let's go to that. I'll click on that. That's from Rose. Thank you very much, Rose. That's really appreciated. $10. I don't know if that came attached with a question. Don't think it did. I just want to screen share something. Just going back to the linoleic acid. I've shown you this before, and I think it's worth digging this out again, because it's a wonderful thing when we're worried about linoleic acid. This is the difference, for instance, for 100 grams of chicken between pasture raised and grain raised. And look at that. Wow, there's a lot of linoleic acid in that grain raised. Okay, where's the context? Well, let's give you some context. Remember what these two things look like, and let's put them next to walnuts.
Wow.
Okay. Wow. So this is what you just saw. These tiny little things down here, the blue and the green, that's pasture raised, that's grain raised chicken, and that's walnuts. Huge thing there for people listening on the audio. It is about 10 times as high as the chicken. 10 times as high. Right. Okay. So let's get rid of that. Let's remove that. Cruise. The super chat's coming in thick and fast. Same lab, A1C, 3 weeks apart, 5.9 and 6.6. Later value just after flu. Yep. CGM during flu was around 130, usually 105. Thoughts on the A1C change? Yes, you had an infection. And when your body is fighting infection, it tends to put up your blood glucose, because it puts everything up. It puts everything up because it wants all your nutrients going around. It's kind of keep you strong. You may even find you had a little bit, if you did your CRP, for instance, your inflammatory markers, you might have found that's gone up. Ferritin would have gone through the roof. Because ferritin is an acute phase reactant, and it stops your body having iron. It locks it away. So your bloods during a flu, during an infection, even an infection you don't actually know you've got, the readings will change. So I'm not overly worried about those readings. Also, if you're a long-time carnivore, of course, you've also got to consider the fact that your red blood cells are going to be lasting longer. Don't forget, the A1C is a calculation. It's a very flawed metric. The best thing to do is fasted glucose, C-peptide. If you're doing labs, by the way, this is C-peptide, fasted glucose, fasted insulin. That gives you a much better idea of what's going on with your glucose management. And your continual glucose monitor, believe it. Actually believe it, over and above your A1C, because although your continual glucose monitor is still a calculation, it's not actually looking at your blood glucose, by the way, in your blood. It's looking at it in the interstitial tissue, the fluid between tissue. It is a good proxy marker. It just gives you a good idea of what is going on. So the CGM, I would believe that average more than a lab's A1C. Any thoughts on that, Richard?
I think you've covered it. Nailed it.
Okay, cool. Another super chat. Thank you very much. This is very helpful for the channel. We really do appreciate it. Thank you. Deb, 72 years old. Looking at your picture, you would not believe that. In fact, I'd just done an interview with somebody, and I thought, well, he's about my age. He's about 60, this guy. At the end, I found out he was 76. Wow. And a six-pack, 76. Right, anyway, back to Deb. 72 years old, 85-pound loss. 85-pound loss at goal weight hit, lifting 3 days a week. Want to build muscle. How much? Well, you've put creativity. I wonder if that's an auto change. Is that creatinine, do you reckon? Or creativity?
How much
These
creatine?
shoulders I take?
Well, let's just give some advice in general. So it's wanting to build muscle. Creatine can be incredibly beneficial if that's what you're alluding to. Creatine, we can obtain around 5 grams per kilogram of meat. I do believe that there are benefits to consuming more. And I say this from personal use. I've been carnivore for a long time. I noticed that when I consumed, and I experimented with supplementation creatine from 5 grams up to 25 grams a day, I found the sweet spot to be around 10. So 15 grams total, 5 grams from my meat, because I consume around a kilogram of animal proteins each day. 5 grams pre-training, 5 grams post-training. And that helped fuel the phosphocreatine energy system. And it also added water or volume to the muscle, which helped with leverage. So it changes your physique as well as making you stronger and supplying that phosphate to the ADP as it's reduced from ATP to ADP back to ATP. So it allows you to push through that PC system and extend it for a little bit longer. In other words, it allows you to lift heavy weights in simple terms. Now, if so you mentioned shoulders, so I'm guessing that it's shoulders or delts that you're looking to build there. As you can see on the picture, it was a part that I was particularly proud of. There are a number of exercises that you can do in regards to this. Now, a lot of people will use the lateral raise this way, and what I found is if you come to the front and do that, you actually work the rear delt, which when you're standing, in a normal position, the rear actually comes to the front and it adds a considerable amount to the delt. So bend over and do this sort of motion, if you like, with some dumbbells. It doesn't have to be heavy. Higher sets tend to be best, and you can do these a number of times a week. In regards to the amount of protein, aim for around 1 gram per pound. Now, what we tend to typically give females is around 0.9 per pound. But it's okay to go over on the protein, especially if you're weight training. So aim for at least 1 gram per pound of body weight. Eat the fat as nature intended, because protein with fat increases muscle protein synthesis. Carbohydrates do not build muscle, by the way. And if we can, we want to try to benefit from the mTOR reset. So mTOR, when we activate directly, which we can do via training or via animal proteins, lasts around 3.5 to 4 hours. So as it starts to drop back off, we can activate it again via a consumption of bolus of protein. 1.5 grams to 3 grams of leucine. So 3 grams of leucine, which is optimal, is found in 6 eggs, for example, or a generous portion of meat, typically 40 to 50 grams of animal proteins from weight. Should be enough to cover this depending on the cut. But if you can do this maybe twice a day, so what I tend to tell women is to consume 2 to 3 meals. So when consuming your meals, if you can consume that amount of protein in each meal and allow you to activate mTOR and split this 4 hours apart. So in theory, you could train in the morning, you could consume food 4 hours after, 4 hours after this, and 4 hours after this. This would still allow you to maintain a 12-hour or in theory, it's a 16-hour fasted state, but we are technically breaking the fast because we're activating mTOR by training. But from a dietary perspective, we're still in a fasted state. This will allow you to build muscle, heal and repair quicker, and allow that muscle recovery. You could also look at supplementation of leucine directly, which you can take just prior to meals. But these are all the 1%. You're not going to see huge differences. But what I would say in regards to building muscle, it's a slow process. Even the people who you see on stage who are absolutely huge and full of anabolics, they're building 5 to 6 pounds per year maximum. It's only possible to build around 8 pounds, I believe. So we're talking maybe less than, it's 0.8 pounds per month, typically, I think. Incredibly low. So if we add that up through the course of the year, it's an incredibly low amount of muscle protein. These people that you see on YouTube who say they've gained 10 kilograms in a month, they may have gained the weight and volume in the muscle, but it's not muscle. It's not dry muscle protein. These are two very different things. So my point is consistency is key. Keep up the hard work. Lifting 3 times a week is fantastic. Try to split it. Different body part variations I find works best for me. Push-pull legs tends to work best. So you do a push on one day, you do a pull on another, and legs on another. That's what I found worked best for me. Rep ranges of 12 to 16 with 4 to 5 sets, 45 minutes to an hour. So we don't overexpress cortisol because this can lead to fat storage. So consistency is key, but remember the body composition is incredibly important. So the lower we can get the body fat within a safe range, a healthy range, the better the body will look, and almost give us this illusion that we are a lot more muscular than we are. So there's a lot to be said for the body fat percentage. So I hope we've covered that in there, because I can't work out from
Yeah.
So I think
Deb
we've
has
covered it.
Yeah, Deb has corrected herself and put creatine. And just following up what Cruz said, I was talking about CRP and ferritin, just to show you CRP was 10, went down to 0.6, and ferritin was up at 470 down to 92. That shows how dynamic your bloods are. So don't forget, bloods are one snapshot in time, and they reflect your current environment. Don't be led down the garden path of looking at numbers only. We have Kevin D, a £5 super chat. This is for Richard. So I'm just going to sit back and listen to Richard. I'm fat adapted. Not me personally, it's saying Kevin's saying this. Richard, I'm fat adapted carnivore, and I'm due to cycle a very hilly 100-mile sportive soon. Do you have any nutrition tips for this long event?
Fantastic, and good luck to you, Kev. Look, you're going to do this. I don't want to say easily, because you always push hard when you're on these rides. Going back 2 years ago, when I was training with a couple of friends of mine who were training for Ironman Wales, I cycled the Ironman loop, so it's 112 miles. And as you know, Kev, it's incredibly hilly. 112 miles on zero carb. I didn't bonk. I didn't it was hard because I'd only ever ridden 40 to 50 miles prior to this. So talk about being thrown into the deep end. So look, if you are fat adapted, which is different to being keto adapted, by the way, and I'll explain briefly, fat adaptation can happen very quickly. So this can happen within as little as a few days, where the body starts to break down stored body fat and dietary fat and put it through beta oxidation and use fats for fuel. Now this happens quickly. And beyond this beta oxidation is ketone production, where we create things like acetone, acetoacetate, and beta hydroxybutyrate. But many of these ketones are wasted. They're wasted in the breath and in the urine as acetone. And this is a wasted ketone product. So when we test with the test strips or the breath monitors, it shows that we are producing ketones, i.e. wasting ketones, because they're wasted products. So we think this is fat or keto adaptation, but it's fat adaptation, but not keto adaptation. Full keto adaptation comes a little while further, and this can be as quickly as 12 weeks, or it can take over 12 months. And typically for most people, it's closer probably for 12, unless you're an athlete that's been doing this for quite some time. And there are things you can do to fast track this also. But when you are keto adapted, there is less, you're not wasting the acetone in the breath and the urine. So if you test with these, you show well below 0.5 millimoles, for example. You may even show complete negative. And when you test with the blood monitors, the BHB in the blood will also be low, probably around 0.4, maybe even 0.3. This doesn't mean you're not producing ketones. It means that the monocarboxylate transporters and the enzymes BDH, ACAT, and SCOT have all been upregulated enough to utilize those ketones at such a high rate that there's less within the body or circulation. Now, when you get to this point, you carry around 15 times more fuel stored as fat than a carbohydrate counterpart. I think it's like 150,000 kilojoules if you had a 6% body fat, for example, compared to someone with a 10% body fat who's fueled by carb. So we literally carry 15 times more energy. This is enough to see you through that 100-mile bike ride and beyond, if the mechanics in your body allow you to do so, which is a very important factor. Now, that said, what can you do? Hydration is really important. So electrolytes, which I use there. I'll post a link in this after the comment. Electrolytes are super important. I believe that mine are the best on the market for a number of reasons. I won't bore you with that now, but take a look at those. They're going to help support through the journey. Now, as far as other supplementation, what we can do is consume C8 oil in with the electrolytes, or powder may be more beneficial. The C8 powder is sent directly to the liver via the hepatic portal vein and instantly converts into ketones. So this is going to increase your ketones within your blood and give you that energy that's going to keep you going. Further additions to this could be the supplementation of exogenous ketones, which is what I use in the form of the raspberry bomb for athletic performance. It contains caffeine as well as ketones, and they work synergistically with the C8 to ramp up your endogenous production while increasing your exogenous production. Now, this makes a huge difference to me in athletic performance. On a run, on like a half marathon, you're talking as much as 40 seconds per mile of a difference it makes for me on a run. On the bike, where it makes a difference is in the pain in my legs, in my quads, because the BHB blocks a pathway called NLRP3 inflammasome. So it helps buffer this pain and allows you to push through. So when you get to the point where you think that you've got nothing left, you drop a bomb, and suddenly the life force in your legs comes back, and you keep on powering on. So we can get into more details in regards to this in the Skool group, if you're part of the Skool group, Kev, or we can jump on it on another one, because we've got lots of things to talk, or send me an email or book a consultation or whatever. But there's lots we can do. Now, in regards to fueling pre-race, what I'd recommend is a high-fat meal the night before. And ideally, I personally prefer to ride fasted. You can take fats with you, like keto bars, for example, which I make, which contain MCT, or you can take cheese or pieces of beef, fatty cuts of beef, if you want to. And that will basically more of a mental thing, but you don't have to. Some athletes I work with do like to eat some eggs or cheese before they ride and run. I can't do that because I like to feel absolutely empty, and I don't like the feeling of anything in my stomach at all. So, experiment coming up to that ride with these processes. But cheese can work very well. But a few hints and tips there. And I'll pop those links into the chat. In fact, yeah, I'll do that now. I'll pop the links into the chat.
Brilliant. And you talked about the Skool group, just in case people want to know what Richard was going on about. And incidentally, somebody asked, how do you get a consult with Richard? You can look at his YouTube. There's links. There's also links within the Skool. You can also email him. But anyway, let's just talk about the Skool group. The Skool group is what you see there, sort of like a much better version of Facebook. You have a classroom as well. There's lots of courses you can go to. Free keto course. There's things about going carnivore, all about the thyroid, with free ebooks and lots of videos. Ebooks about dairy, and of course, obviously about it. Fruit and veg, which is backed by all the growers. I seem to have lost Richard, but anyway, all the fruit and veg stuff, which is taken from PDFs from the growers of fruit and veg. We also have a protein course, a problem-solving course, and then we have my ebooks and our Fat Club, Richard and I, our Fat Club. There's also a calendar. If you are joining, you've watched this and you've joined, you click on the calendar. That's where you see links to the lives. And we're going to be doing some lives in the week as well. I'm going to do, or we are going to do possibly, don't know yet. I think about diabetes. I'm going to be talking about bloods, maybe a little bit more as well. Just doing more specialist stuff. So the Skool community, you can join that. I'll put a link in the chat. So let's get rid of that screen share and go back to the questions. Let's stop that there. Back to the start questions, which is, yeah. Did we talk about how best to book you for a consultation?
I've just put in those links to the electrolytes and the raspberry bomb and the MCT should you be interested in regards to that. And I will pop a link now for the consultations. But all of these links are available in on my YouTube channel, in the write-up, in not the comments, but in the general write-up. The links are there, and you can always find me that way. But I've just popped those in there just in case.
Great stuff. I know this isn't a question, but I want to alert people to this next bit, which is Vitaligus has just said, "Oh yes, Richard, amazing on Dr. Kilt's morning show. I saw that. It was brilliant. It was brilliant." And
Awesome.
you
Thank you.
had myself, and I think you had Dr. Abs watching. You know, Dr. Kilt's does attract, you know, people that create content as well. They're our consumers, and that was really good. You were brilliant on there, Richard. I just want to say that.
Too kind. Way too kind, as always.
Well, no, I'm just saying it as it is. Craig, how do you stick to carnivore when you're shopping for food and you suffer from ADHD?
Great question. Look, if we take it back to insulin resistance to begin with, and it's important to understand insulin resistance interferes with the absorption of our aromatic amino acids, phenylalanine and tyrosine. These create dopamine and norepinephrine, and dopamine are neurotransmitters that block irrelevant information from the brain. So they help us concentrate. So lack of this is associated with things like ADHD. Now, why is this important? It's important because when you gravitate into living the lifestyle and you abstain from carbohydrates in the first place, then this helps with ADHD. I'm not saying it's a cure by any means. Carnivore Muscle, who's on the call, knows all about this, and he's seen some incredible progress and achieved incredible things during his carnivore journey. Competed last year, incredible condition. So all of these things are factors that add to our ability to be able to manage things like ADHD. So that's what I would say first and foremost is once you start to gravitate in this and you move away from the sugar compounds, the carbohydrate compounds, the production of these neurotransmitters allows us to make better decisions, and it allows us to combat these things that may be holding us back to a degree. Now, in regards to shopping, what I do is I don't go to the supermarket, so I'm not swayed by all of these other shiny packets and whatever else is there. I do most of my shopping on a Wednesday. So I train with Mikey, a good friend of mine. He's European champion in Ironman. We train, we go for a breakfast, and that usually entails bacon and eggs and sausages cooked in butter. And then we go to the butcher, my butcher, and I will spend typically £40 to £60, depending on what cuts. Obviously, some cuts are more expensive than others. I do tend to go for cheaper cuts, chuck steak in particular, offal, and so on and so forth. But I'll buy in bulk, and I buy it from there and there only, and then that's it. I'm done. So I'm not passing the aisles that contain all of these sugary treats and shiny packets, and I go home and I split. So when my butcher bags these for me, he'll split them into twos. So you'll cut the steaks into nice big thick steaks, put 2 in each pack, and that's how I cook them. I cook them 2 at a time. I keep a day's supply in the fridge. So what I'm eating that day, and another day's supply, and the rest is in the freezer. And as I'm consuming these and cooking them, I'm taking out of the freezer and putting in the fridge. So over that 24 hours, that's defrosting, and then that's ready for me to cook in there. And that's what I do. I try not to buy. It's difficult in fact, I don't buy any sugary treats or any crap at all. But it does find its way into my house because I have a 10-year-old daughter. And unfortunately, I'm not the only one who buys things for the house. But it's, so it is difficult. Look, we all live in the real world, and these are all real problems and real contributing factors. And we can't, some things we can't control, some things are out of our control, but what we can control is what we have in the house. And that is one of the biggest factors for me in regards to cutting out these non-foods, because I'm a sugar addict. And if I get a craving, which doesn't happen any longer, but if I get a craving, I will eat every form of carbohydrate that I have in my house. And I'm talking everything. And I'm a pig. I like to eat. So I don't keep it. Now, if it is there, then I put it into another cupboard. And this isn't my cupboard. It's my little girl's cupboard with her little treats. And I program myself that isn't for me. And I have my own cupboard or fridge or shelf in the fridge with all my little bits. And that's how I sort of combat that. But look, incremental steps. Nobody expects you to be perfect. Yes, you are going to fall off the wagon. We all do. Some of the elite carnivores that I've met in the world have fallen off the wagon. We all do. But as Stephen said a few weeks ago, a famous Rocky quote, wasn't it? It doesn't matter how many times you get hit down or knocked down. All you need to do is shake yourself off and get back up. Consistency is key. So prioritize animal proteins and natural fats. By doing so, this will allow you to produce the neurotransmitters which naturally create, dopamine and serotonin and balance glutamate and GABA, and pull you away from this glutamate excitotoxicity, which are all going to fuel these cravings and further impact ADHD and so on and so forth. So consistency is key. So those would be my tips, is just understanding that as a basis. Because when you understand that, you implement it, you action it, and then you try your best to stick to it. And if you fall off the wagon, then you just get back up. And it's as simple as that. But Steve, have you got anything to add?
No, I think you've covered that beautifully. And I'm very aware we've got a lot of questions. So I just want to say to people, if you are enjoying this and your question hasn't been answered yet, we'd like to do proper answers. We do an extra half an hour after this where we finish at 8 o'clock here on YouTube, 8 o'clock UK time on YouTube. So when we finish in about 15 minutes, we then do half an hour more in our Skool group. I'll put a link to that in the chat. And we also do another hour on Monday night, 8 p.m. UK time, for 60 minutes. So we do lots of stuff for free, but you can join the Skool group and get involved. Okay, right, we're going to go back to the questions. Just double check we haven't got another super chat. Let's jump the queue. Right, okay, here we go then. Yes, Mr. Joe Bott. Is it a good idea to take citrulline sprinkled on meat plus fat?
So citrulline has a sweet taste. I tend to add it to water and electrolytes. Well, citrulline malate has a sweeter taste. Citrulline base tends to be less sweet. I wouldn't. I don't. There's no reason you couldn't. But I mean, one, it's not going to taste too brilliant. I should imagine that the bioavailability is going to be decreased by the competition with the other nutrients within the food that you're sprinkling it on. My recommendation would be to take the citrulline in a drink form away from a mealtime, maybe a couple of times throughout the day. I take it before I do a physical activity, a run.
Richard, sorry to interrupt. Can we just go through why you would take it in the first place? Is it because of removing ammonia in the urea cycle? Is it what's the other benefit? The nitric oxide? Why would that be a supplement?
So that's why I take citrulline, is because it's a potent vasodilator. So if you are training and working out, it dilates the arteries and the veins and allows the oxygen to be transported through the body a lot quicker, and therefore the oxygen and your athletic performance. And it does make a difference to me. So I'm speaking from personal experience. I notice a difference in my athletic performance when I'm using citrulline compared to when I'm not. In fact, I had an interesting conversation with Dr. Abs recently about different types of citrulline. We won't get into that today, but that's probably a talk for another day. Maybe we can get him on to discuss this. But citrulline, I think, is fantastic for vasodilation in general. Ketones do this. I mean, we do this naturally from living the lifestyle. But again, if you want that additional help, that can be fantastic. But personally, I tend to drink it away from meals, and that's when I notice that it has the biggest impact on my athletic performance. Because I think if you're consuming it with food also, I mean, this is going to affect the osmotic pressure within the blood, which is probably going to be counterintuitive to the vasodilation benefits anyway, I should imagine. Obviously, we're going to get some of this with the water that we're drinking. But personally, I think it's probably more beneficial to consume away from a meal. But what do you think, Steve?
Well, you're the supplement expert, aren't you? Really. So I'm going to go with you. I think if you have looked at this and you got your pro card, you know what you're talking about. Yes, I agree with you. I think a lot of things when we talk about supplementation, I find it difficult to sort of unravel it from whole foods, because I feel that when you're eating protein and fat together, which is what it comes in nature, you get everything. You get your bile release, which helps with amino acid absorption. I think when you're talking about a supplement, that is an extra thing, isn't it, over and above your food intake. So I would say on this way of eating, you tend not to supplement unless you've got a very specific goal, which is over and above. which is athletic performance and stuff like that. Yeah, and I think if you're looking for that nitric oxide hit, I suppose I would guess that, yeah, taking it separately would be better because other things are going on at that moment, aren't they? So, yeah, but I would always sort of refer to you in that situation there. Cam's dad, question: taking 20,000 IUs of vitamin D was low and will test again in approximately 60 days. I have stage 4 cancer. Some say it helps with cancer. I don't really see the question there.
So I think, I think the question is alluding to, is it a good thing to be taking that amount of vitamin D? Look, what I would say in regards to when we look at healthy people have higher vitamin D. They're metabolically healthier. Taking vitamin D, unless you are deficient, I don't think is going to achieve an awful lot of things. Unless you are deficient and at a point where you're not getting any sunlight, or you're traveling a lot, for example, or maybe you need an extra kick. But it's important to understand that it's healthy people who have high vitamin D. We don't become healthy by taking excessive amounts of vitamin D. And yes, there is a requirement for a certain amount, but much of this we can obtain from animal proteins and sunlight. So I'm not against the supplementation. I think that there are times and places for this. In regards to helping with cancer, personally, I should imagine that it's the increase again in nitric oxide from the UVA rays from the sun, which is helping fight the cancer over anything else, because this is, again, a potent vasodilator. But that set aside, I mean, what fuels cancer, or what is cancer? Cancer cells lose their ability for oxidative phosphorylation, which means that they push glucose into a fermentation process where they use lactate for fuel. So the first protocol is to stop eating the carbohydrates and the sugar, the glucose. We stop the supply of energy, and now the cancer cells have nothing that they can use. They can downstream use glutamine, but again, that's a talk for another day. And glutamine we can get from everything. That's not something we can stop consuming from animal proteins. But low carbohydrate, reducing sugar, has got to be the first protocol. If you can do that, then that's going to put you in the strongest position in order to move forward. In regards to the amount you take in, I mean, it's not a high amount. It's not excessive. I don't think it's going to cause any problems. But keep it in. I don't think it's the magic elixir. I think, again, the biggest lever that you can pull is cutting out the carb completely, going zero carb, increasing the fat particularly, and by weight. I typically recommend 2-to-1 ratio of fats to proteins. I've worked with a number of cancer patients, and we've tried different forms of treatment. One was a 1-to-1 ratio, which is really successful. So it's open to suggestion in regards to ratios, but either way, it was animal proteins and natural fats on zero carb that are shown to be most successful.
Brilliant. Richard, just to say, you've got 101 viewers on your channel right now. And we've got 177 people looking. So yeah, you're doing well. Your channel is growing, which is good. I think all these things you're doing on Instagram and your shorts and reels is excellent. Right. Okay. This is interesting, actually. Crazy Cats. Husband stopped his statin. HbA1c went from 6 to 5.6. So went from 6 to 5.6. Only added light weights daily, but believes it's stopping the statin. Ironically, yeah. I mean, that's pretty much textbook for those that don't know the figures. If you're in the States, 6 is 126 milligrams per deciliter, and 5.6 is 113. Statins have been shown in studies to, when you remove them, to lower your HbA1c by around 4% on average. And what is that difference? That's about 4%. So yeah, scientifically, that's what's been studied. I'm not saying anything else other than that. Let's get into the next thing. For anyone that likes lamb, I have some lamb shanks I could put on to cook. I've been ill, so they're frozen rock hard. Instant pot with available chicken broth and salt generously. Thank you, feral grandmother. That's very good. That's a nice comment. Right, here we go. Next one. Citrulline. Hi guys, high iron, strict ferritin on Carnivore. Should I worry? Functional medicine practitioner says it's not good post-menopause. Why is it not good? Do we know why it's not good? I've done a Substack post about this very recently, and I will be doing a video with Lee Kopus tomorrow about this. So yes, it is too big a subject. So I would recommend either emailing me to get my Substack link, which has got all the articles, or just check that out. But basically, when we recycle our red blood cells, there's hemoglobin in there. Heme, there's a little clue there. Heme is iron that we recycle. Did you know that over 90% of our daily iron requirements come from the recycling of red blood cells? 90%. Yeah, and that's actually a conservative figure. So if you imagine how many red blood cells die and how much iron that is providing, your body is going to be pretty smart and say, right, okay, we've got this X amount of red blood cells and we've got this X amount of heme coming back and recycling. Like I say, about 90% of our needs are coming back in. Not much from diet. It's about 25 milligrams from heme and about 1 from diet. That's actually what the figures are, pretty much. If you suddenly have red blood cells not dying and you lose a third of that heme coming back every single second, all right, which because the red blood cells live that much longer, what's the body going to sense? The body is going to sense that the recycling heme has gone down, and so your ferritin goes up. It's a little bit more nuanced than that, but that's the nub of it. There's a lot more going on. You have to look at saturation. You have to look at serum iron. You have to look at your ferritin, hepcidin. There's so many other things you can do, but absolutely watertight, what I'm saying, absolutely watertight. And then you look at also mucosal ferritin coming out. So your gut, in a carnivore way of eating, the turnover of cells is much more healthy, which is why we have sort of gut or GI distress resolving, which is why we get Crohn's resolving, IBS, IBD, all of this resolving because our turnover of cells is much healthier. But what's in the mucus layer of those cells? Ferritin. So if your cells are turning over quicker, you're also losing that. There is a misconception that the only way that we get rid of iron is by donating, as in phlebotomy, or if you're a woman, by your period, basically. And that isn't true. There are other ways where we regulate our iron. So, and that's one of them. So it's the gut lining turnover. The entire lining is turned over between 3 to 5 days. Now, if you've got a healthy gut, that's actually a good thing because it's recycling. That is why cancer in that area where there is a high turnover is very rare. So it's another thing. Anyway, way too much on that, but it is a big issue. So, Richard, did you want to add any more to that?
You've nailed it. Perfect.
Thank you very much. So we have 2 minutes left. I think it's a big subject, and I'm bugging Richard to do more videos together. Nailing him down is very difficult. Jonathan has mentioned in the chat that you are booked to the gills because you're such a brilliant person to talk to with great information. But I feel that we've got to do some stuff, Richard, together.
We do. I agree. Yeah.
Excellent stuff.
I'm gonna make time.
Yes, we're going to do it because these things are important, and there's lots of misconceptions out there that we can just really nail. Right. If you've enjoyed it, thank you very much for looking on YouTube. Thank you very much for looking on X. Thank you very much. If you have got to the end of this and you haven't subscribed to Richard's channel or my channel, or you haven't liked or commented, please do that because we are both getting shadow banned every so often. Please do that. If you think you're subscribed, can you double check? Because YouTube have been taking subscribers off of my channel. If you think I haven't replied to a comment, that's not true. I reply to every comment on my YouTube channel, but they get removed, which is very frustrating. So please try just to double check that you are subscribed to both our channels. If you want to join Skool, I did put a link in the live chat. I'll do it again. I will screen grab some of the questions. If you come over to Skool, we might even answer some of those questions. But I just want to thank you so much for supporting us. It really, really does, help. Just those things, just subscribing, which is free, by the way. There's no obligation.
Yeah, massively appreciated. And look, within the next 30 seconds, see if I just want to, Beverly's put in there about comforting drinks, hot drinks. I'm going to post a link for my chocolate MCT, which is ideal for those who are transitioning. Bone broth make fantastic options also, but they do take a bit of getting used to. So I've just posted that for you, Beverly. And just to, there's some incredible questions further down in regarding pro-oxidants and whether they actually exist in plants. And someone else has mentioned about Sally K. Norton saying that low carb causes issues with hormone responses. These are things that I'd love to get into. So if you are available, join us over on Skool shortly. And these are some questions that we can answer there. But thank you.
Yes.
Great to see you.
Yes. Thank you very much. Yes. Thank you very much. And I'm going to